been years, literally years, since we last talked. But it felt appropriate this of all dumpster fires of years to spend some time on something that is actually a very nice aspect of this year, the reading. I read some particularly lovely books this year, so with no further ado, in no particular order, here we go. The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, I don't know, something like that. I usually don't read new releases because I like to, give it some time for the ratings to settle out of the hype stage into the this is probably actually the more accurate rating. So the fact that I got to this book only a year after it was released is pretty impressive for me. But this was like everywhere, so it was hard to avoid. So many people have read this book. I actually read it with my book club, and they did not like it as well as I did. I, on the other hand, had a lot of fun with this book. And I'm also not too jaded to enjoy a nice twist, which makes me want to go back and actually reread this book under the lens of what I know now. Big fan. If you like mystery books, I recommend. Girl Genius Omnibus Volume 1, Agatha Awakens by Phil and Kaja Foglio. I have spoken about this series before, but since it's been more than 5 years since I last read it, it was high time for a reread, and still one of the best things that so few people know about. This is a free online graphic novel that I happen to buy in book form because I love supporting them, and this is just a beautiful novel that deserves support. This is steampunk at its best. Even if you think you don't like steampunk, I promise you'll like this series. This is one of the few things in life that I will full-throatedly, full-heartedly evangelize like it's my freaking religion. It's just perfection. Faro's Daughter by Georgette. If you want to glimpse the early stages of modern historical romance, you have to go back and read a lot of Georgette Heyer's work. Now, warning, these books were written by a white woman in the 40s, so there's offhand comments, character descriptions, certain words used that we would not use now. So read judiciously. But beyond that, these feel like you're reading a Jane Austen novel that's evolved slightly closer to what we consider now to be modern historical romance. It's like that missing link. These are just a pleasure to read. This one actually has a slightly scandalous heroine as she works in a gaming house, like a gambling house, and she's definitely scrappy and smart, which in some of Heyer's other work, not so much. So I am a big fan of this one. I recommend. Oona Out of Order by Margarita Montimore. This was a bit of a revelation for me. I would not have picked this up on my own. The ratings on Goodreads for it are just a little bit lower than my usual benchmark, and I'm just naturally suspicious of time travel books. They're so hard to get right, and they all have to live up to the perfection that is the first 15 lives of Harry August. Oh, I read this because my book club picked it, and this is why I am in a book club, so that I am forced to read books that I might not usually read, and then they turn out to be fresh and fulfilling, like this one. Granted, I think it's somewhat obvious she's a fairly green author. It does feel like she'd intended to cover a much larger span of Oona's life, but as often happens in writing, she wrote 339 pages and realized, oops, I have 60 more years or so to go. So I guess we're done now? But I really don't care. They were 339 great pages, and I'm really excited to read more of her work as it comes out. Sleep With Me by Ilona Andrews. This is another free online series, though this is not a graphic novel like the last one. This is just regular texty text. It's one of my all-time favorite urban fantasy writing duos. Shout out to the Kate Daniels series. This, however, is their self-published on the internet for the fans series, and every book is just better and better than the last one. I always wait for the series to come out on the Kindle format so I can buy it and support the authors. The world building in this is some of my favorite in all sci-fi fantasy. The concept of an innkeeper with a sentient inn is just delicious and presents endless possibilities for storylines as various alien species are thrown together at these galactic inns. I am extremely addicted to the series. The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. I'm doing so much better on my goal to read more suspense books this year, though it's 100% due to my book club, not to me. This one is really atmospheric. The setting of the girls' camp, the whole thing feels like it has a mysterious fog over the lake vibe to it that makes it just an absolutely fabulous read. It was a bit campy, but that I think is part of the charm. The ending has a few moments where you're like, really? Okay. But I do not care. I want my books to transport me places, and I can still feel the fog on my skin from rowing across that lake in that canoe, not knowing what lies beneath it. Read it. I read multiple Mariana Zapata books this year, so it's hard to choose just one, but if I had to, I would pick Hands Down by Mariana Zapata. Hands down. This lady should be way more popular than she is. Though I say this every year, and she does get more traction every single year, but she should have all the traction. She never lets me down. Okay, actually, she rarely lets me down. There's 2 of her books I actually do hate with a pretty alarming passion. For you Mariana Zapata fans, I will let you guess which 2. But 9 times out of 11, she blows all my socks off in a rapturous way. This woman writes contemporary romance right. And I have now officially read all her books that she's published so far, and there's nothing listed in Goodreads as upcoming, and that makes me very, very sad. The nonfiction book that I am going to include in this list is A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. I've had this book since at least college, I think. I read maybe an 1/8 of it and never finished it, but always like to think of myself as a person who would read this book. This is kind of a holdover from my teenage years when I firmly believed that I was going to be an astronomer, until I figured out that I have a really hard time staying awake after 10 p.m., so that career choice may not fit my lifestyle needs. But I still wanted to be a casual consumer of astrophysics, so I figured this book was the thing that I should read. It only took me another 15 years to actually do so, but in November 2019, I picked this book up and read it slowly for 6 months, and finally finished it after all these years. Hawking takes complex topics and makes them actually understandable, and you will come out of this feeling like you've touched some of the most awe-inspiring advances in science of the 20th century, and it's kind of a rush, frankly. Kiss of Steel by McMaster. This is solidly in the paranormal romance realm. It could also be called steampunk. This was a reread for me. I read it 7 years ago and I liked it, but I was a little bit hesitant since I knew even at that point that steampunk wasn't exactly cool anymore. But it was one of those books that just sat with me all these years and just marinated in my mind. In 2013, I read a lot of books, and most of the romance books I read, I don't really remember anymore. But I remember this one more and more favorably as the years passed. So I had to reread it to make sure my brain just wasn't embellishing how good it was with the passage of time. And I gotta say, while my tolerance for He-Man posturing is far lower now than then, and that did bother a bit in this book for me this time around, it certainly wasn't totally egregious, however. Overall, this book is just catnip for me. It's got a little Dickensian flavor to it. If you've ever read Our Mutual Friend, there's some light similarities here. And it has a downtrodden but courageous heroine, and just some really fun world-building elements. It's really perfection. Stephen King and I have had a contentious relationship. Well, on my end. He does not know I exist. But on my end, I do have a problem with how he writes women. It's painful. Nails on the chalkboard painful. I'm looking at you, gunslinger. So I came into this one fairly leery, to say the least, and I'm happy to say this book is awesome. The exploration of alcoholism, Wendy Torrance, the deeper dive into how the descent into madness works for Jack Torrance, the hedge creatures. This book is a truly slow burn. Yes, there are a few gratuitous descriptions of Wendy Torrance's body that are kind of weird and eye-rolly, but not as much as some other of Stephen King's works in this era. So I can say that though I have been kind of half-hearted meh about Stephen King up to this point in I can tell he's a good author, but just not for me kind of way, this book was most definitely for me. And now I'm more on board with Stephen King. Okay. So my Goodreads goal for 2020 was 50 books, which for those of you who know me from 3 to 5 years ago, when I used to read 250 books, this is a bit lower. But I did end up overshooting the 50 books goal and hit around 75 books for 2020. And I feel that was a decent place for me to land. It allowed me a few weekend binges, but mostly it's just steady daily reading. So I think I'll do that again. 75 books for my Goodreads 2021 goal. So what was your goal for 2020? What are you thinking for 2021? And what were some of your favorite books of the year? Love you all.